Hello and welcome to the Queen of Hearts astrological page. Today I'm here to talk to you about the natal birth chart. Now the birth chart is the chart that is cast at the exact time, date and place of your birth. I want to tell you what it is you can actually learn from that birth chart and some of the things that you might not be able to learn from that, and some other techniques that will help to fill in the gaps. And I'm talking about other charts and predictive strategies that we can use as astrologers to get a lot more information. Now, because the birth chart, remember, this is a static chart. It was cast a really long time ago, and it's very personalized for you. It's taking a snapshot of the cosmos at the exact time, date, and place you were born. And there is a connection or a correlation between those planetary influences and the conditions of your life on Earth. The birth chart reveals your vitality. It can reveal certain health conditions that you might experience, constitutional factors, genetic factors, even as far back as intergenerational traumas and things. It can talk about career matters, relational matters, areas where you might sort of undo yourself or make mistakes. We're talking about the 12th house here. It's got all kinds of things: chronic diseases, family, your family are featured in your birth chart. So the birth chart is not just about you and your personality. From a traditional standpoint, the birth chart is a map of the whole life, and that includes all the people, situations, and events that the native is likely to meet. So the way I like to talk about the birth chart is it's like a garden. Okay, you've got certain things planted in that garden, and when we look at other charts that might be activating certain things at certain times, so let's say, for example, we do a solar return session, and a solar return is a chart that's cast each year of your life, okay, when the sun returns back to the degree it was when you were born. Now, that chart is to be read through the natal chart because the natal chart is the root chart, the base chart. So if certain things were planted in your natal chart, planted in the garden, the solar return will reveal whether those conditions are likely to come to fruition in that said year. And if they are, in what way? What kind of conditions, what kind of circumstances are you likely to meet in that 12-month period? So we can see here that the natal chart provides that foundation. It provides the awareness of what things are planted in your garden. What special skills do you have? What is your response? If something goes down, like how do you respond to that? We can look at the moon, we can look at Mars, we can look at all of the angles in your chart to see what kind of activities you do. Like how do you spend your time and energy? We might look at the 10th house for that. What's your relational structure like? Do you have long-term relationships? Do you struggle in relationships? We might look at the 7th house for that. We might look at the planet Venus. So we can look at certain things in the natal chart to give us an overview of your life in general. Okay, give us an overview of the topics, the people. If you're having a certain issue, say maybe you're having an issue with friends or with a family member. Perhaps we can look at the natal chart to see if there's something in there, there's some dynamic, maybe the ruler of the 4th house, which connects to the parents, especially the father. Maybe there is a square to the ruling planet there. And this can give us an idea of something that needs to be resolved in your lifetime. So the natal chart's really good for that. But like I said, to actually understand when these things, so these particular aspects or these particular topics that are lying latent in a way in that natal birth chart, when they're likely to be activated, we actually need to use different timing techniques. We need to use different predictive charts. Okay, so something like a solar return, like I said before, which you can have when you have your birthday. So if you have a birthday coming up and you want to go deep and you want to have a look at what kind of things are incoming for the next 12 months ahead, then you can book in for one, book in for a solar return. It's super interesting. And we can see the types of things that are likely to be coming into fruition, what kind of planets are ruling the year. Now, there's another technique which is called annual profections. Now, this gives us a planetary ruler of the year. So what that helps me to do as an astrologer is to cut out all the noise of all of those planets, okay? Because when we look at a birth chart and then we start putting a solar return on top of that, we start to have a hell of a lot of noise. Did you hear the rooster as I said that? Hell of a lot. There's a new rooster living where I'm living, and I'm not happy about it at all. For those who know it, when I first moved up to Byron area, I was living on a rooster farm with 15 roosters, and I have rooster PTSD, kind of. And anyway, that's a freaking another rooster. There's only one. Anyway, so back to this. We have a lot of planets, we have a lot of charts to look at, so we need to cut the noise. And to do that, we can use this technique of annual perfections, which activates one house per year of life. So for example, when I'm in my 30th year, then I have the 7th house activated, so that the topic of relationships is activated in a general sense for that year. So that gives us something to focus in on. So we'll be looking at transits to the 7th house. We'll be looking at the 7th house ruler in your natal chart, who will become the ruler of the year. And that planet, whatever that planet is on the cusp, becomes the ruler of the year. So then when I'm looking at your solar return, I'm focusing in on that planet. I'm focusing in on that sign, because then if I see transits to that, I know that that is like turned on. As I said before in another video, that's the planet with the microphone that year. And it cuts the noise. Now we can do that on a monthly level too. I do monthly returns as well. So that's just like breaking that year down into finer portions. So if you've got something coming up, like you've got an important meeting, or you're traveling, or you've got to make a big decision, you can go and have, you know, maybe have a solar return session. Or if you want to focus in even more, we can look at the monthly returns and see what kind of conditions are likely for each monthly period. So you can go really deep on this. But the thing I want you to remember is that just by looking at your natal chart alone, it's not going to tell you really much at all about your life here and now. It's going to give you more of a generalized understanding of your nature, your life conditions, okay, what sort of events you're likely to meet. You know, is your life going to have a few hurdles in certain parts? You know, maybe the work sphere is really hard for you. You know, do you struggle to hold on to resources? Do you have a lot of luck with your friendship group? You know, this type of thing is really easy to see, and it can help people lean into certain areas and maybe focus energy on certain parts of life where the energy is naturally flowing. And that's the beauty with astrology. And the same goes for having a solar return chart done, okay? Because what that shows us is the energy is pointing you to this area of life. You know, perhaps it is, you know, a career change that looks like it's on the cards. And we can see a lot of motion, a lot of movement, a lot of energy drawn there. And maybe you come and see me and you're thinking, oh, I was just thinking about going overseas, and I have got this really great career opportunity coming up, but I just think I'm going to go overseas. And I might just say to you, well, you could push against the flow of the energy. But if you were to lean into that 10th house instead, you're going to be more inclined to have, you're actually going to get that success, you know, in that area. And so having the astrological intel can help people to make wiser decisions and to not have to push upstream, you know, to be able to go with the flow of events as they're unfolding and to actually just tap in. You know, some years we have hard years. And while it can be a challenging job for me to tell someone, yeah, this next 12 months is hard, you know, it's a good idea to make sure you spend a lot of time with loved ones, or, you know, there could be something that's coming up that's quite intense. It doesn't always tell us what it is either. The thing about astrology, it's the language of symbolism. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the planets and I'm saying, okay, well, this planet connects with this house, which connects with this symbol or this topic. This planet naturally represents this symbol or these potential events or things or people. What does that mean to you in your life? So it's not just me talking at you, it's a dialogue, okay? It's trying to get a handle on what might this be meaning for you in your life. So yeah, just to kind of round this out, the natal chart is great, okay? It gives you that foundation, it gives you that root chart on which everything else is read through. Now, I don't read a solar return, sorry, it's really windy. I don't read a solar return chart on its own. Like, I don't just look at it on its own. Of course, it does have something to say in a general sense about that year ahead, but it must be read through the natal birth chart, okay? Because there's something called radicality, which means where does it tie in? You know, where does that actually activate? And what is it bringing to life? You know, it's almost like that solar return is going to water certain plants in your garden, or maybe it's going to rip them out. I know it's a bit, it's always like a six of one, half a dozen of the other. Life is changing sands, but it's really good to get the intel. It's super interesting, and you know, we use a number of different charts as far as predictive go, even things like horary astrology, which I really enjoy doing as well. This is the astrology of asking important questions. So if you ask me a question, like, a question like relational one, like, will we get together? Will I get together with this person? And I cast this question chart when I understand your question, and it's like an oracle kind of question, So in a sense, I'm asking the universe for you. And the chart at the moment that I ask it is representative of the answer of that question. And then what we do from there is I interpret it to give you an answer. Okay, so I interpret it to take you through the likely progression of events, people, the way things look to be moving, and what you might be able to do. It's also about kind of working it. Sometimes there's ways you can actually make decisions. Like I've had times when I've asked horary charts about certain events or doing this or that, and it's been a resounding no. And it's given me a warning. It said, yeah, you're likely, the next planet that the moon applies to might be Pluto, which could indicate like serious trauma or something problematic. It was a moon square Pluto aspect. And I thought to myself, well, do I really want to go into that? Is that going to be nourishing for me? And so to give people this intel, helping people to see the blind spots that they might not be able to see, is really good, because you can actually sometimes divert the flow of events if they're not looking good and healthy. So so horary astrology is amazing, but we always do look at whether or not that horary chart, that question chart that I cast, whether that ties into your birth chart, because then we can start to see a story unfolding. And if we see that there are connections, then we call that a radical chart that we can judge. And so it's multi-layered, and that's why it's really important to have a birth chart looked at, because that is your foundation, that is the core, and everything is going to be read through that. So it's not to be understated, but remember, it's not to be overstated either. You can't just get your birth chart and make predictions about today or your life. Perhaps you can look at the transit chart for today, like the movement of the planets in the here and now moment. And perhaps you'll see certain planets making, applications or whatever, making aspects to your birth chart. And perhaps that will have something to say. But to get an even deeper view, like I said, we look for these planetary, it's windy. We look for these time lords. We look for these planets that are actually ruling the year, the month. Okay, we look at the ruler of the solar return, okay, the ascendant of the solar return. So we want to go deeper. We don't just want to look at the transits and be like, yep, all the transits are important, all those planets are important. Like, I want to focus on what's most important and cut the noise. So I encourage you to consider, doing a bit more with this if you're interested, because as I said recently when I did a talk at a festival on practical astrology, that astrology is working in your life whether you know how to interpret it or not. So if you want to get an edge and you want to really live a good life, or as good as you can, given the conditions of your chart and the life that you're kind of raised in. I think there's always the environmental factors that play a role in our lives. It's not just the birth chart. Sorry, it's so windy here. If you want to get that, it's always a good idea to use the astrology to your benefit. So reach out to me if you've got any questions. If you want more information on this and you want another video, let me know, because there is so much we can go on about, but I want to make sure that it's digestible, and I know that some of it can go over your head, so I want to keep it as practical as possible. I hope this finds you all well, and I will be back again soon. I probably will look at some of the astrology of the here and now, so like the mundane stuff in terms of the incoming new moon we have in Pisces, and about Mercury moving into Aquarius, which happened the other day too. So I'll probably do that in the next few days just to give you an overview, but I thought this was a little bit different, and I think it's important that people understand a bit more about how astrology works so that they can understand whether or not they want to get involved. All right, have a beautiful rest of the day or night.